Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am very excited to have as my guest Paul Hemphill. And let me tell you a little bit about Paul. He is a best-selling author, a speaker, and a videographer. His specialty is creating videos to help families develop a bond between parent and child. He uses true stories from the most written about event in our history, provides life lessons from that event, and follows up with an engaging questions that relate directly to both parent and the child. So today we're going to talk about how to use history to develop personal character. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Paul Hemphill. Paul, so good to see you.
Thank you, Vicki. It's great to be here. I'm most anxious to dive right in.
Well, before we get into the meat of this, I always ask two simple questions. The first is, where do you live? Where do you call home right now?
I live in just outside of Boston in a town called Southborough, between Boston and Worcester. And my wife and I have been living here for about a year because we sold our house about a year ago, and we've been there for about 30 years, and we decided time to move, time to get something smaller. The kids are gone, and so here we are, and we're excited about our move, and things are really moving along. So
awesome.
Here we are.
Yeah, you don't have a Boston accent, so I wondered how long you were there.
Well, my wife does. She can say, park the car in the Harvard yard. I mean, she's very good like that. So it's entertaining for me just to listen to her after 52 years of marriage. So
I'll bet.
Yeah.
So we talked about just briefly about what you do today, but I'd love for you to share about the journey that led you to do what you do today. What were those pivotal moments that said, this is what my passion is, this is what my vision for the future is, and these are the steps that I'm going to take to get there. Sometimes they're not a straight road, so I'd love for you to share about that journey.
Yeah, it's not a straight road, and it's a great question. I'm glad you asked. I had spent about close to 19 years working with high school juniors and seniors on getting them into the right fit college. I was a marketing guy, marketing these kids like a can of soup to the colleges instead of trying to market them as great students with great grades and test scores and all of that. And I always would tell them, like, colleges are not interested so much in your test scores or your grades, because you're going to look like everybody else who's applying to that school. So you have to answer one simple question, which they're all looking for an answer to. And the question is, who are you? Okay, and if you can answer that question, chances are excellent you're going to get into that school. And so I had a 97% success rate with my kids over 19 years, just because I told them one simple reality of life, and that is the world will accommodate you for fitting in, but it's only going to reward you for standing out. So standing out is your purpose and my purpose, to make you stand out so you get rewarded with that college acceptance. And so that's where it came from. But to answer your question more specifically, Vicki, I was frustrated with my two sons coming home from high school, and I would say once every 6 months, I would ask them, so how do you guys like history? It's boring, Dad. Okay. And so after about the third time I asked him, one of my sons said, Dad, why do you keep asking the same question? We're going to give you the same answer. Okay. And so, and so what happened? I went down to the local library and I asked the librarian what she must have regarded as the dumbest question she had heard all year, all day. And I said, you have a book here in the library that convinces a teenager that history can be really interesting and rewarding and meaningful? And she looked at me like I had three heads. She said,
Yeah.
of course not. No, what are you talking about? So that was what I call my Damascus moment when I decided, well, I have to do something about this. And so I spent the next several years researching uh, proof of what and how history could be rewarding to a young person. And so I discovered a historical event that is the most written about event in our history. And it's simple. It's the Battle of Gettysburg, which took place in 1863. And human nature's on display there, like you can't believe. And there's so many books written about it. I think about 80 books so far have been written about that battle, along the thousands of articles that have come from that experience. But anyway, I had the resources available. And as I was doing my research, I'm saying to myself, well, wait a minute, there's a lot of information here that would help my students get into their colleges. Because one of the things I found out, especially with the girls, Vicki, who were A students, top SAT scores, you name it, they had this sense of not feeling great about themselves. Their level of self-esteem was not that great. And I thought this was ridiculous. Where are they getting this lack of self-esteem when their parents were talking very positive about them, and I'm talking very positive about them, and they're doubtful about what they're hearing? And of course, kids during teenagers, they really don't believe their parents about anything.
Of course.
And so, but if I tell them the same thing their parents have told them, they think I'm brilliant. Wow, this kid really knows his stuff. And so, and so, so what happened is I'm just reading this history, and I'm coming across these different people who were in the Battle of Gettysburg and the notes that they had written either at home after the battle or in their diaries. One of the questions I always like to ask anyone in a leadership position, someone who's teaching leadership, I always like to ask, how would you convince a 15-year-old who doesn't think very much of themselves that they have real leadership ability to the point where they could actually save a life this afternoon without really trying?
Wow.
Whoa, really? I could do that? Yeah, you could do that. And that's the reason why, Vicki, I really do not subscribe to the standard thinking amongst people who teach leadership. And I don't know if you're in this app or in this lane, but see, I'm the one who is convinced that you are a born leader. You just don't know that you are.
Yeah.
You are born with leadership abilities. And if we want, as we get into this conversation, I can prove to you how a 15-year-old is a very effective leader and can save a life without really trying.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit more about how history can guide us to help our families. Because, I do teach leadership as well as I work with the youth to be better, find their voice. Let's just put it that way. And some of the groups that I work with, we do a session with the parents as well once a month, because a lot of the things that we teach the kids and work on building skills with the kids, they go home and they are not exposed to support for those ideas and things.
All right.
Imagine that. And so talk to us about, how do we use history to guide us to help our families?
Well, first of all, you have to have a situation where whoever wants to talk about it can actually introduce the topic in a way that catches the attention,
Right.
okay, of the person to whom you want to speak. And that's the reason why, for example, I avoid using the word history in my conversations with parents and kids because it's a negative word.
Mm.
So I use the term America's past. Now, to a teenager, America's past is yesterday.
I was just gonna say.
Okay, so they're thinking about maybe something I'm going to talk about, something that happened yesterday. All right, and so and it was when I was doing this research, I had developed this topic which I thought was absolutely fantastic, and the name of the book was "Why You're Already a Leader," and I used 88 stories from this historical moment to prove that you're a leader. And the book really wasn't selling all that well. Management types were buying it, and I was getting some pretty good feedback on it. But it wasn't really, selling that great until one day I got a phone call from a guy in Pittsburgh. Oh, Pittsburgh sounds familiar to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And he said, Paul, I just wanted you to know that I loaned your book to a couple of sisters who are in high school. And they came back to me and they said, hey, the stuff that's in this book is really great stuff, but the title really sucks. And so, his words, by the way. And so I said, wow, that's the market I want to reach. And could you ask them what the title ought to be? He said, well, I'll get back to you in a couple of days. I'll call them up and we'll see what we can do. So I hear back from him. He says, they came back with, they think is the greatest title of all. And I'm thinking, whoa, this ought to be a good one. Okay. And it turned out to be this title.
Yes.
Okay. And when I went on the on Amazon with that title and that new book cover, my sales went crazy. I mean, it became a bestseller almost overnight. And it stayed that way for a couple of years. And now I think it's ranked like around 16 or 17 in one of the categories. So it's not doing too badly. And so what happens is once you get people disposed to the possibility, wow, this sounds very interesting. And so I encourage them, of course, to open the book to any page. This is not something where you start reading from page 1 to page 250. You can open the book to any page for 5 minutes and learn something, okay? So when I say character development, there's a lot of issues within the book, like motivation, compassion, communication, being effective in communicating, that sort of thing. All the things that you would want to discuss about the elements of leadership. I call them basically virtues. For example, I stood in front of a group of history teachers one day, and I said, do any of you teach Civil War history? Of course, all the hands went up. I said, did you discuss Gettysburg? All the hands go up. And I said, okay, well, and a lot of these guys, had been teaching for 20 years or so.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And so, very dedicated, all that. I said, how do you explain to a sixth grader what Robert E. Lee did at Gettysburg to prove that honesty is the best policy? What? Okay. And the point here is that I'm making with these guys and gals is that you can make history very relevant by telling the story of a man who commanded thousands of men to go into a battle situation. It was a disastrous decision because within an hour, over 6,000 of his men were either killed or wounded.
Yeah.
And when the survivors came back from that engagement, Robert E. Lee went up to these men and he said, you know, what just happened is my fault. It's all my fault. And his men, who had a tremendously high regard for their general, basically said, no, sir, it's okay. Let us go back in. He said, no, you're not going to go back in there because this was a disaster. And the whole point of that exchange, Vicki, was to basically tell, again, a fifth grader, that, you know, admitting to your mistakes gives you credibility. It allows you to be understood, and it allows you not to have to make excuses for a bad decision. It allows you to get more respect, if you will, because you're being honest. And so honesty is a virtue. It's part of good character formation. Right. And if we just isolate that one story, okay, and then multiply it by 88 times with other virtues that we can talk about, that's what this book accomplishes, and that's what my videos accomplish, because I did convert the book to video because kids are more receptive to watching videos as opposed to reading something.
That's true.
So the parents will buy the book, they'll write reviews of the book. The kids won't buy the book, they won't read the book, I'm assuming, and but they'll watch the videos. And the videos have quite an impact between the parent and child, which we can discuss. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
You did.
Okay.
So let's just continue on about the video, because I think it's really important. I know as I was going through my many years in the corporate, and I was a project lead, but as we talked about learning, it was apparent that we had to change from the book learning to video, to even to train. I worked at UPS for 27 years, and to train our people, they were more responsive. They remembered more clearly through video.
Right.
So how impactful has that been for you to really use that video as a tool now to talk to both parents and the children?
Great question. The videos are divided into three parts. The first part is I tell the story about this individual and what he or she did during the battle. The second part is what I delineate as life lessons that we can learn from that person's behavior during the battle. But the third part is seems to be the most impactful, between the parent and the child who are watching the video at the same time. The third part is nothing more than a series of questions. You know, simple questions. Some of them are philosophical in nature, but are not perceived as philosophical because I write the questions at the level of a high school student so they can easily understand it. Like, for example, in the case of Lee, I might ask something like, have you ever been in a situation where you were rewarded for being honest? Or were you in a situation where you were dishonest, and what were the consequences of that dishonesty? So it forces the student and the parent to basically look at each other. And I always say to the parent, be sure your student answers the questions first, not you, and don't coach them, okay? If you have to, take a week to let the student ruminate on that question and get the answer to it. Then once they come back with the answer, and by the way, there's no right or wrong answer, just let it go. Just let it be, let the student say what he has to say. And then you answer the question. What I have found happening, Vicki, is that I get emails from parents who say, number one, man, these videos give me the opportunity and my son to talk to each other like we haven't talked to each other in a long time. We actually have a conversation. Okay. But more importantly, something very subtle is going on in this watching of the video and in these questions and answering these questions. The parent is finding something out about the student that maybe they didn't know before. And the student is finding out something about their parent that they didn't know before. Like the parent asking or answering the question, have you ever done anything dishonest that people recognized and you had to suffer the consequences for? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So, and parents don't like to disclose anything negative about themselves. They always like to suggest to their students that they're perfect, that they're ideal. You should be talking to me and nobody else because I'm your dad, I'm your mom, that kind of stuff. So that is the real emotional benefit. There's an emotional bonding going on when people are engaging in my videos, not engaging in my book, but in my videos. So the book is basically for the parent who likes to be isolated and wants to read on their own. But the videos are basically engaging both the parent and the student. And I'm finding that, and by the way, the questions came about quite by accident. I didn't have the questions in the original videos. What's fascinating, there was a leadership moment when I was doing a Zoom call with a school in Norman, Oklahoma. And the Zoom call was going really well. The kids were great. The teacher was talking about how positive the students were responding to the videos and all of that. And then when we were coming to the conclusion, ready to shut off the Zoom call, this little hand goes up in the back of the room. And I said, oh, do you have a question? She says, yeah, I'd like to ask you a question. This little 8th grade girl walks up close to the camera, Vicki, and she says, very innocently, Ms. Temple, I really like your videos, but I have a little suggestion if you don't mind. No, and she said, it would really be probably a more of a connective thing if you ask questions at the end of each of these videos to kind of make the parent and the student answer these questions that relate back to the video. Whoa! So she was exercising what I call a leadership moment. She was leading me to a great idea. So that as a follower in that moment, I grabbed it and ran with it. And I went back to all my videos, and for a good 2 weeks, I had to revamp everything because of her.
There you go. Out of the mouths of babes.
So leadership really is a very fluid experience, Vicki, as far from my perspective. And I can tell you the story about that 15-year-old girl.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, what happened was just at the beginning of the battle, she was living in town, and her mother said to her, look, things are pretty rough right now. I think you ought to get down to your uncle's house. You might be safer down there. And so she said, okay. So she runs down about a good mile down to her uncle's house. And before she actually gets to the house, she notices there's something rather odd below the window of the house. And as she got closer, she realized there were bloody limbs, cut off arms and legs and that sort of thing being thrown out the window by these so-called surgeons at the time. And that was a pretty rough experience for her. But for the next 3 days, she stayed there because the battle only lasted 3 days. And what she was asked to do was to go to wounded men on the ground who are lying flat on their backs, just to give them cool water if they were asking for it. And she said, okay, I can do that. And so for the next 3 days, when she would go to each man, each wounded person, she would listen to their agonies and their problems and stories about home and that sort of thing. What she didn't realize that these guys are looking up at her and saying, that's my mom right now. That's my wife. That's my sister. Okay, and she, in essence, she didn't realize that she was giving these men some hope to stay
Yeah.
alive. She was doing what I call leading them across an emotional bridge of hope over which few of us adults could cross alone.
Yeah.
She brought some of these men across that bridge, and some of them were able to survive, which is, and the whole lesson behind that experience, Vicki, is that uh, a young girl at 15 years of age can give hope where there is none.
Yeah.
And maybe, not maybe, but actually save a life without knowing that you are,
Yeah. I
without really
believe it.
trying. All she had available to her in that experience was a cup of water and the ability to listen.
Yeah.
And listening is such a huge, it is the most important element of communication, right? And so she was exercising that element unbeknownst to her because she didn't realize, as most kids don't realize, most adults don't realize, that listening is an extremely important element in conversation. So I look at listening as a virtue, as part of good character development. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's what I teach too. It's like, and you know, in our lives we'll come across people that want to be the smartest person in the room and want to be the talker and talk and talk and talk, and they think that they're leading, and the fact of the matter is that they haven't given anybody chance to think about what they said, to discern their information, to feedback their thoughts that could enrich this whole conversation, because it isn't a conversation. It
Right.
is someone talking at you instead of with you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But even in that circumstance, when someone's talking at you and you're actually listening to be kind, that person is still leading you to continue listening, if that's all you do.
That's true.
So the element of leadership can be very subtle in my regard, in my experience, and in my uh, looking at history. And one of the benefits of, I should say, the primary purpose of doing what I do originally, Vicki, was to make history relevant.
Yeah.
It wasn't my purpose to create emotional bonds between parents and children.
Mm.
It's turned out that way, which is
Yeah.
okay. But but making history meaningful so that but, but people have to go to sources to realize how history can be meaningful. You have to search out. If you're reading something about, I don't know, World War II or a biography of Eisenhower or whatever, you have
Mm.
to figure out what it is that you can learn from what that person did in that circumstance. So that's why when someone calls me or emails me and says, "Gee, I see you wrote these couple of books on Gettysburg. Can you tell me your opinion about what this guy did on the second day of the battle?" And I write back and I say, "Look, I'm not interested in answering your question." Okay. I said, "I don't do history. What I do is I try to glean from historical moments what information I think I can use that's going to benefit me. I look at history very selfishly." Okay. And so, and so because if you don't look at history selfishly, I believe, is that you can't
No.
learn from it.
Yeah. You're not gonna.
Okay. So when someone says to me, you know, I hear this old expression, George Santayana of Harvard said years ago, he made famous that expression about, if you don't study history, you're condemned to repeat it. And my conclusion was that George Santayana didn't understand human nature. My thought is that if every person on this planet were given the ability to have the equivalent of a PhD in world history tomorrow, three things would continue to happen. We would continue to make war on each other. We would continue to watch the corruption and fall of governments everywhere. And we would continue to have the element of slavery in our midst. We just like to call it something else, human trafficking. And those three things would continue to happen for ad infinitum. So it reminds me of that, what John Tolan, the historian, once said, that history doesn't repeat itself, human nature does.
Mm.
And so that's why I take that kind of pivot instead of preaching to people that you're going to repeat history if you don't learn it. No, you got to take a whole different perspective towards history so that you can learn it for yourself. How's it going to benefit you personally?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, when a student walks into a history class, I say to a history teacher, what is that student subconsciously thinking when they walk into your class? How exciting your class is going to be? No. What they're saying to themselves is what you say when you walk into a hardware store. See, when you walk into a hardware store, you already have in your mind something that you're going to purchase because you're sold on it, right? So you're going to buy that hammer, right? So the hardware store doesn't have to sell you that hammer. You're just going to go in and buy it because you're already sold on the reason why you need the hammer. When a student walks into your history class, this is what they're thinking. What am I going to get out of this? How is it going to benefit me?
Yeah.
Okay. They're taking a very selfish point of view towards what you're going to be teaching. So I always like to say to these teachers, don't teach history, for God's sake. Sell it. Sell it like a product. Okay. Make it meaningful to them. Get my book. Okay. or subscribe to my videos. And I will tell you, Vicki, I can't get a public school in the country to take my program because the politics is just amazing. And if I found a school that actually took on my videos, they would not want me to be publicizing it. I mean, it's just crazy out there. But I say that only because I'm ignoring what happened in the election recently. And so I think things are turning around and things will probably be more open to suggestions about getting my stuff, my program.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, time has flown by. You gave us so much great information.
Oh, good.
Really good insights. Hopefully the folks out there took notes. But if not, there's some videos that you can go and watch for sure. So it's time now for me to share my screen that has contact information if you do want to learn more about what Paul does and how you can get in contact with him. As always, those are just listening. You will be able to get these notes on my Vicki Noethling YouTube channel. So please do subscribe, as well as my findyourleadershipconfidence.com website. The website is americaneducationdefenders.org. For Facebook, it's Kids Futures. For Instagram, it's Kids Futures with a number 1 at the end. LinkedIn is Kids Futures. YouTube is @KidsFutures123. Pinterest is Inspiration for Teens, same as his book. And X is Trojan Horse ED. I'll turn it over to Paul to talk to you about his call to action, what you'll find on his websites, any links or resources, as well as what he does out there on social media and where he spends the most of his time. So it's all yours, Paul.
Thank you, Vicki. Really appreciate the time we spent together. I would suggest that people go to my website, which is AmericaneEducationDefenders.org. And on the page that you're going to land on, you're going to be able to watch 2 examples of my videos. In fact, one example is of the 15-year-old girl we had discussed in this podcast. And then from there, of course, you can click around and see what other items that are available to you. I have a store that you can visit where you can purchase any of my books or videos. And in fact, I came out with 3 new books, with using AI.
Awesome.
And all 3 books are humor books. Like the first title is "Watching Paint Dry," uh, or "Surviving Teen Chaos" is the other book. And the other book is funnies from the U.S. presidents. I do a small book on all the funny stories of all the different presidents in our history, which I think parents and students will find fun to read. So,
Well, Paul, thanks so much for sharing all of your information. I do encourage folks. His videos are really great. So go out and check them out. Visit him at his website and be able to connect with him, ask him questions. And as always, thanks for being such a great guest, Paul.
thank you, Vicki, for being a great podcaster.
So as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey, but it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.